Thank you so much for clicking on my video, and if you're returning, welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to talk about episode 2 of Archetypes, the Duality of Diva with Mariah Carey. Let's get into it. Once again, thank you so much for clicking on my video. If you have not already, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel, and turn on that notification bell so that you can be notified whenever I drop a new video. So today's episode, I really want to dig into episode 2 of Archetypes. Again, Archetypes is really breaking ground. Everyone said it was groundbreaking, but I love that we're getting to see just how amazing it is in real time, but also just some of the conversations that it's spawning. It's causing some introspection. It's causing me to think about what is my belief of this word, and how do I feel about this word or that word, and am I holding any of those archaic beliefs? Am I holding myself back with my beliefs of some of these words, and am I kind of playing into the intended trap that some of these words are used to put us in as women? So I love that we're having that conversation, and I'm really glad to have this podcast right now. I think there's no better time to have it, and I think this is the greatest example of taking the stones that someone throws at you and building up your own, building up yourself and your own progress. I love that she's not allowing anything to hold her back, and she's actually using it to elevate herself, and I think that's great. Not only that, but so far we've got Serena and Mariah, and next is Mindy Kaling. I'm really enjoying this. I'm a huge fan of Mariah Carey, so I was excited about this. I was also surprised when I saw that Amanda Seales was on this podcast in some way, so it was cool to see how she was involved. And that soundbite was very relevant, and I love the way it was used in this episode. Kudos to whoever had that idea. So this episode, I found out that Mariah recorded this the night after her infamous BET Awards performance with Big Lotto. Lotto sampled Mariah Carey's song Fantasy for her song Energy, and it's big energy, and it's amazing. I love the way she used that sample, and I love the fact that Mariah agreed to perform with her as a new artist. People can say what they want about Mariah, but she is always doing things like that she does not have to do. She could have easily just been like, girl, you better perform this song and get over it. She didn't even have to approve the sample. So the fact that people like to act like Mariah is just this a-hole, it's because people use the term diva, and then they all have their own belief of the way of what diva means. And I think it's just so timely to have this episode, and above all else, use Mariah Carey as the person who is discussing the word diva. So to find out that she literally stepped off stage at the BET Awards with Lotto, took a nap, and then woke up and did this podcast with Meghan, I was like, you better work, Mariah. Literally, she was working hard. The difference between being treated like a mixed woman and a black woman. And this is the conversation that I keep seeing people kind of take Meghan's words out of context. She said that she'd always been treated as a biracial woman. And then when she, not married into, but began dating Prince Harry, she started getting treated like a black woman. And I saw a lot of people I can't believe she said that, blah, 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 and kind of using it in a way to insult her. And I'm really curious as to, what do you think her responsibility should be? And the reason I ask that is because in a society created and based around white supremacy, your proximity to that entity or that belief affords you certain privileges and advancements in society. And if you don't acknowledge that, especially as the person who benefits from those privileges, you're perpetuating the problem. And with a podcast like this, and with someone like Meghan, who has made it very clear what her goal is when it comes to pushing society forward, I'm surprised that anyone expected anything different. I am not a biracial person, but I am a light-skinned person. And so there are times where I have benefited from colorism. There are even if it's not at my own, doing. Because people have this belief sometimes when they meet me, of like the curiousness of like, what is she? What is she? And I can tell you for sure, I have observed times where I have been treated differently, spoken to differently, etc., as opposed to my darker skinned relatives or friends. And I can tell you that shit is very real. It's not fake. And when you deny that it happens, now I do not recommend playing into it. You can't control what other people do, but when you experience it, you call the shit out. Hey, why did I get this, but that person didn't? That's who should be doing it above all else. If you realize you benefit from a privilege that oppresses someone else, it is your job and responsibility to call it out. There have been times where I've like I said, in high school, I've brought this example up before. In high school, I made the cheerleader squad, my varsity cheer squad, my senior year. After having never cheered at that school, I cheered in 8th grade at a very different school in a very different district. Them people did not know what I could do and what I could not do. And the captain of the JV cheer squad that was trying out alongside me was a friend of mine. She was a dark-skinned friend, and she tried out. And when I tell you she had flips, and she knew how to do all kind of stuff, herkies and all kind of stuff, and toe touches, and she was real good, and her voice projected, and she was charismatic and fun. And I was charismatic and fun too, but I was a dancer. My moves were very fluid. I was not projecting. And then at one point I said, woo, which is a cheer no. You should never go, woo. Like, you should never do that. But I did it. And I also was not flipping. I did a round off. I did a round off. I did a herky, and I did a toe touch, but I was not doing flips. And I got the cheer. I got on the varsity cheer squad, and the JV captain did not. And to go from being a captain to then not making the cheer squad, and then someone like myself who hadn't cheered at that school anyway, and according to them, I'd never cheered, who was not doing half the shit she was doing, one might ask. And I know in certain districts and schools in certain areas that you have a criteria. If you have people who are not white try out, there is a rule that at least 1 or 2, I don't know the number, have to make it. And again, if your organization is based around white supremacy, those with perceived proximity to whiteness will get the advantage. Of course, at 17, I didn't know any of this shit. I'm just like, oh, yay, I got it. Not thinking anything of it. As an adult looking back, there's no way. Honestly, there was room for more than, like, come on. We paid for everything. Our parents paid for everything. So it wouldn't have been nothing to have 2 or 3 more girls on that cheer squad. They just wanted to keep it to looking a certain way. And they wanted to keep it at fair-skinned people. And I'm not stupid. I'm an adult now. And I'm like, okay, see, again, that's just one of those small things that you notice. Or just how people spoke to me, how differently teachers spoke to me versus my black counterparts, or even relatives. It's not just a white against black thing either. It's internalized. When you grow up and you realize that people treat you better when you are perceived to be closer to a certain look, and you know how colorist society can be, but sometimes people play into that, and they encourage their children to speak a certain way, and they kind of buy into respectability politics, and they kind of say, oh, well, you should straighten your hair, don't let your hair be curly on audition day, and all that kind of stuff. See, it's just it's a slippery slope. But when you deny colorism exists, you are part of the problem, especially if you're one of those who benefit from it, especially if you're one of those who play into it. Or when you experience it and you say, well, wait a minute, why did I get this experience but you treated her like that? What's the difference? What's going on? Another example is in Insecure, when Molly had to go, when she was on vacation in Mexico, and she went to go get her towel, and the white lady in front, they just gave her a towel and went on. And then when Molly came, they were like, you need to show your ID. And she was like, they didn't have to show their ID. And she was like, you got to show your ID. See, it's little things like that people act like you just made it up, or you're overreacting, or you're being dramatic. You're gaslighting people. When they know some shit is real and they can tell how differently you treat them, you are part of the problem when you gaslight them. When you are not on the right side of right, you're on the right side of wrong. So what I want to say is that I'm glad she brought it up, and she acknowledged how differently she's treated even than black people. So here's the thing. In America, again, your proximity to whiteness, or your perceived proximity to whiteness, affords you some privileges, because America is based around a racist ideology, around white supremacy. How else can you explain the fact that we have freaking statues erected for Confederate soldiers and generals and all that shit, and got schools named after fucking... It's treasonous. It doesn't even make sense. When you are patriotic, it doesn't even make sense. You are so racist that you're willing to be anti-patriotic. Like, that don't even make any sense. But here we are. And so when you have that kind of belief, in America, your perceived proximity to whiteness affords you certain privileges and advancements in society. We all understand. But Meghan has always been biracial. And so if, in a lot of cases, if her hair wasn't straight, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know that she was black. She was, as some people like to use the term, white passing. I hate that term because it almost seems like something to achieve. Like, people can mistake you or assume that you are white. And that's not an achievement. That's not an achievement, because it almost seems like if you're white, it's an advancement over someone else. Now, according to society standards, yeah, it is. But we all know that that's not the case. That's not the case. So, basically, the fact that she brought it up and the fact that she acknowledged it is what she was supposed to do. She was supposed to say, hey, as a biracial woman, I understand how differently I'm treated than a black woman. I mean, a lot of people thought Mariah Carey was white. I mean, black people knew. We know our own. But a lot of white people thought Mariah was white. People were utterly shocked. Utterly shocked. So, when I say all that to say, y'all need to lay off Meghan. The fact that she said that is what she was supposed to do. She was supposed to call it out. And honestly, she was treated with a certain level of privilege as a biracial woman in America, and it wasn't until she married into the whitest institution in the world that she was treated like a black woman, because according to their standards, she was black, blackity black. And according to ours, we're like, that's a biracial woman. And I like that they had that conversation about, you always have to choose. You hear this a lot. I hear this a lot from a lot of biracial people, that they always feel compelled to choose. And I don't see why that is. I don't see why it's anybody's business how someone identifies. The fact that they are biracial, they should be able to just identify as biracial. That should just be what they identify as. They don't have to say one or the other, because they got two parents. So, yeah, I mean, you even see on applications and things like that, you'll start to see now 2 or more races, things like that. To be fair, I understand them like, oh, we need to collect data for demographics to see who's applying to our applications. They should not have that shit on an application. If you apply for a job, you should have to put in your demographic info on the site or the platform where the application is housed, and that information goes to the platform for demographic data. But you should not have to put your race, your sexual orientation, your gender on an application. It doesn't even make any sense. Y'all will figure that out when y'all interview me. The fact that you call me for an interview should solely be based on my credentials. What I show up as should be a surprise. It shouldn't even be this big ass like, oh, I'm interviewing a black woman today. Gotta mark off my checkbox. I interviewed one. I didn't hire it, but I interviewed it. Like, y'all not slick. Why do I have to tell you that? That's why I told people, when you apply for jobs, just put white. Just put white. Because what they're gonna say when you show up, what are they gonna say? Just put, whatever the first option is, just put that. I think the first option is often like Asian. I think it's always Asian because it's in alphabetical order. Just put whatever the first one is. Just put anything. Don't put, I mean, I've even seen how, like, I'm not even kidding you, I've even seen in some situations where I've applied and put black, and then I've applied and put 2 or more races, and then I've applied and put do not wish to not disclose or something like that, and I almost always get called back when it's 2 or more, and I almost never get called back when it's the others. So, just something to chew on. People aren't making up colorism, and I don't like the fact that a lot of people like to dismiss colorism because they'll say, well, we have a larger issue at hand, and that's racism, so we don't want to get off track with colorism. We're smart enough to do 2 things at once. We can tackle racism and tackle colorism. We don't have to dismiss our own, the same way we don't have to dismiss racism when we face it. When we are on the advantage side of an oppressive system, it is our duty to call it out. And I'm glad that Meghan called it out. Now, let me get into this podcast because I done got off track because people are attacking her for saying that. And did you expect her to continue to dismiss it? Did you expect her to be part of the problem? It just doesn't make any sense. Okay, so they talked about that. And then Mariah talked about her mom was an opera singer and how because her mom was white in Long Island, when she was buying a home, she did not bring her husband with her who was black. And she would go in and she would do the whole diva thing, and she would go in and get everything they wanted and all that stuff, and they would get into the home. And then when her husband would show up, who was a black man, there would be shock and awe. And let me tell you, people are like that. People are like that. Have you seen all those articles about home appraisals? How people will have their white friends show up for the home appraisal, and then they'll get the home appraised as a black person, and how different the home appraisal prices are. Combo about hair product had me dying. The one thing they missed, because they got pink lusters, but the one thing they missed was Blue Magic hair grease. I still use that. Anyway, Mariah talks about being ambitious to never be a kept woman, and this is something I didn't know. She witnessed, after Mariah's mom and dad broke up, she witnessed her mom as a victim, being a victim of domestic violence, and she felt like it was because she was always at the mercy of her romantic partner, because her romantic partner held the financial weight in the relationship, and she said that would never be her. And I'm glad that she said that. She even said that she paid for half of the mansion she owned with Tommy Mottola, her ex-husband, and a lot of people assumed that that was not the case. I'm telling you, a certain type of person will use their financial standing and status over you, and so it is important to always protect yourself. And good for her for being ambitious. They also talked about Mariah kind of playing into the diva trope. And I've always felt like this was an inside joke between Mariah and her fans. The fact that people really thought she was taking a bath in high heels or in platform heels the way that she did in her Cribs episode, I was like, I think that has a lot more to do with the intelligence of the person who's saying that. Because I feel like everybody knew she was just kidding. Like, come on. Anyway, Meghan asked Mariah to describe herself as a young girl and to describe herself as an adult now. Mariah used the terms sad, lonely, and aspirational as a young girl, and then she changed that to eventually triumphant, which I love that. Reclaim your story. And then as an adult, she used the term exhausted, angry, and hopeful. She did say everything came back to faith, and Meghan used the term my faith is greater than my fear, and I really loved that. I thought that was very relevant, and I really like that. I'm going to use that. And then they both said it always came back to faith, and they always had to have faith that things would improve and that they would have faith in themselves and their abilities. Lastly, before we get out of here, I love the fact that this episode is titled The Duality of Diva, and a big reason for that is because Mariah described Meghan as a diva. She said, "You're a diva too," and Meghan at first was like, "Me? I don't think so, me." And I thought it was just a funny moment, but at the end of the episode, Meghan came back and said, at that moment when Mariah described her as a diva, she was spinning because she assumed like, oh my God, you misunderstood me. What did you read? What must this woman have read about me that was incorrect that would lead her to think that? And then she realized that Mariah meant it as a compliment. And actually Mariah stopped in the moment to explain it and was like, no, you're a diva. Look at your clothes. Look at how you carry yourself. And she realized that Mariah meant it as a compliment. And the conclusion she came to, as she said, she realized one charged word can mean something very different for someone else. And the fact that Mariah reclaims that is her way of pushing society forward and reclaiming the word. But I like that she came to that conclusion of saying, you know, Mariah went back to the root of the word. Diva wasn't originally a negative word. People tried to use it against women to make women feel small and to feel less than if they demanded their worth. And if a woman knows her worth, she is a powerful being, and people don't want you to know your worth because a lot of times they're using your lack of confidence or your short-sightedness when it comes to yourself to take advantage. And Mariah doesn't allow that. I think if we can all agree something about Mariah, she knows who the hell she is at all times. So that's the episode. I really enjoyed it. I'm excited for next week with Mindy Kaling. But I'm interested in knowing what your response is to this week's question. What are 3 words that describe you as a young person and 3 words that describe you today? I'll go first. Three words that describe me as a young person. I will say insecure, naive, and imaginative. And as an adult, I will say driven, positive, and anxious. I have anxiety. But we're working on it. Nobody's perfect. So tell me what three words describe you as a young person and three words that describe you today. And what did you think about the episode? If you have not already, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel, and turn on that notification bell so that you can be notified whenever I drop some new heat for the streets. And I will see you next time. Bye.